long-term 10 to 15 year expectation?
10-year will be 100x, and 15 will probably be 1,000.
1,000? How? But from a market, that's impossible. From a market cap, 1,000 in today's purchasing power, like today's dollar purchasing power.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know exactly where your head's going to, which is, hang on a second, that represents $2,000 trillion, and there's only $1,000 trillion of value in the world.
Yeah, that's exactly where my head's at.
Yep. So let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of what this is. So, or an example of the impossible. So if you look at in the 1850s, just let me break down where we are today in oil production terms. In oil production terms today, we produce roughly 100 million barrels of oil at a clip of, 2 months ago, it was $80 a barrel. Now it's $60 a barrel. So it's $6 billion a day. In the 1850s, they only produced 30,000 barrels of oil in the entire year. Now we do 100 million barrels a day. And so if I said to you, oh, we're going to have 100 million barrels of oil produced in a day in the 1850s, they would have said it's impossible, that you can't do it. There's not enough, there's not enough land mass on Earth to produce that. But as technology got better, they could go deeper. They could, build more efficient pumps, more efficient drills, and all of a sudden now we rely on oil for everything. I look at this and think a lot of people are misunderstanding that Bitcoin is a need, not a want. And other than air, water, food, shelter, Bitcoin is the next most important thing that a human can have. And there are maybe 1 million people in the world who feel like that right now. But over the next 15 years, 8 billion people on Earth are going to figure that out. And so what can happen is, and this is where, if you have a look at how market caps are calculated, you look at the most recent price and you multiply that by the number of units available in that market. And in short, the market cap is downstream of the current price, and price is determined at the margin. My expectation is, because we're sitting on basically a fractionalized banking system that is effectively built on debt, we need to recapitalize our society so that we're sitting on more equity than debt. Now, the only way to do that with no downstream consequences for society is to put all of that capital into Bitcoin. And what happens here, and this is the only asset that can really get an increasing return on scale rather than a diminishing return of scale, is that $1 into Bitcoin produces a 2 to 10 to 100x return as far as total equity goes for the Bitcoin market cap. If you put $1 into property or $1 into shares, you might get a 10% or a 15% return if you're lucky. So you're getting a 10x return by putting equity or capital into Bitcoin. And so what I look at, and this is, say diagrammatically, what we're looking at is the current system that we're working in is basically a tiny little bit of equity with a huge triangle of debt sitting above it, which is very, very unstable. My expectation is that Bitcoin is not only the only asset that can fill that void to stabilize it, but it's the best asset from a society perspective, because there's no impact on cost of living pressures, inflation, and housing. The fact that you can't live in a Bitcoin is the very reason why they're going to choose this asset to recapitalize the world. And so